As you walk through Oasis, you wonder what could be the cause of such beauty in the desolate wasteland. You hear the birds singing and smell the flowers in bloom. You look around as you walk slowly, taking in what feels like a fever dream. Eventually, you find the cause, a tree with a face. He says to you,
"I had you brought in here to ask a very simple favor. Would you please kill me?"
Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Fiction. In today's video, we are going to discuss the dilemma surrounding the little sliver of paradise known as Oasis and Harold. Do you kill him? Do you stunt his growth? Or do you help him spread? To understand how it got to the point of this decision, we need to start from the very beginning. So the backstory of Harold. We begin in 2072 with the birth of Harold. As believe it or not, Harold was not always a ghoul, nor was he always attached to a tree known as Bob. Being born in 2072, this would make Harold about 5 years old at the time of the bombs dropping on October 23rd, 2077. On this day, Harold, at the sounds of the sirens, was ushered into Vault 29. Vault 29, on the day of the bombs dropping, only accepted those under the age of 15. So Harold was separated from his family. He claims that the vault was overcrowded, with not enough food, water, and other necessary supplies to go around. Moving on to 2090. This is when Harold turns 18. This is also when, 13 years after entering Vault 29, he would step outside of the vault, becoming a merchant. He would work his way up to becoming a caravan boss in 2096. However, over the years of him working on the caravans, it was not all just peace, rainbows, and supply runs. Let's be real, we are talking about Fallout here. It was more an issue of frequent super mutant attacks, causing chaos and creating many issues with the caravan routes. This led to the decision to go on an expedition to figure out where these super mutants were coming from. So on the 22nd of May, 2102, Harold would set off with his good friend Richard Gray and several others from the hub to track down the source. With some skill and tracking from Gray, they were able to track down where these monsters were coming from. And on the 23rd of June, 2102, they reached the Mariposa military base, which they would attempt to enter. Based on the fact that Harold is no longer a human, one could hazard a guess that this little attempt to enter the Mariposa military base was not as successful as he hoped. Harold does not remember much of the inside of the base. This was due to both him and Richard Gray being hit by a robotic crane. What Harold does remember is Richard floating around in a vat of FEV, thinking he was dead from what Harold thought was a vat of acid. Harold passed out from his injuries, waking up in the wastelands outside of the base. The exposure to the FEV led to Harold mutating and becoming what we see in the first Fallout game. Luckily for Harold, 4 days after, on the 27th of June 2102, he would be found in the wastelands by some traders who would take him back to the hub. This is where you will find Harold as the Vault Dweller, which is the main protagonist in the first Fallout game. Harold would spend decades in the hub, however, not as the successful caravan boss he once was. Harold lived in poverty, hiding away from people as many feared him due to his ghoulish appearance. This would be until 2161, which is when he would encounter the Vault Dweller. At this time, Harold already had his little sapling accompanying him inside of his head. Little Bob had already taken root. Although small, he was present. After meeting with the Vault Dweller, Harold would have the courage to leave the hub in 2162. In 2238, Harold would arrive in Gecko, the ghoul city of New California. If you would like to know more about Gecko, let me know in the comments. Here he would become the foreman of their power plant. He would also be the one who would maintain the relationship between Broken Hills and Gecko, as Broken Hills was their supplier of uranium ore. However, Gecko would not remain his home, in part due to others like Gordon pushing for Harold's removal as foreman. With the defeat of the Enclave at the end of Fallout 2, Harold would set off once again, making his way to the other side of former America to the capital Wasteland. With the sapling in his head continuing to grow larger and larger throughout his journey, this tree growing large enough to grow its own fruit. Eventually, Harold, considering he was carrying quite a large tree as part of him, would grow tired. He would stop to rest, and when he tried to get up, he found that not-so-little Bob had taken root, leaving him stuck in that spot, looking like one of those apple trees in The Wizard of Oz. Harold would be alone in the wastelands for quite some time. Eventually, in the late 2250s, Harold would be found by someone wandering the wastes. This would be a wanderer who would take the name of Birch. He would found the cult, the Treeminders, a group of people who would look after Harold. This group of people would love and care for Harold and Bob, known as the Great One or the Tree Father. They would worship them as a deity or a god, which according to Harold, he did not enjoy. With the care given to them, he would spread, turning the desolate wasteland area surrounding the tree into a lush green area. Eventually, with his growth, Harold's organs would be displaced, and with his ability to spread Bob's little seeds, he would use it to attract people outside of the Treeminders in an attempt to help himself, which in 2277 would come in the form of the Lone Wanderer, who we know as the main protagonist of Fallout 3. Now that we have caught up on the history of Harold, we should discuss a little bit about Oasis and the Treeminders, since they do play an important part in this story and the decisions surrounding the whole to kill or not to kill Harold thing. Oasis is a lush green region formed in what used to be the area of an abandoned mine. This area is structured around Harold and the tree that grows inside of him. Not only does this area house Harold and his leafy companion Bob, but it also houses the Treeminders and the forest that has grown due to Harold's and Bob's seeds. The Treeminders are a religious group or cult led by Tree Father Birch and Leaf Mother Laurel. This group are not all that welcoming to outsiders, with only a very select few ever being allowed inside of Oasis. Others being turned away, with some being shot if they try to gain entry, or if they are raiders, killed on sight as a way of protecting the little area and their supposed god Harold. Part of the Treeminders cult's beliefs include the refusal to say Harold's name, as they believe this shows him the utmost respect, instead referring to him in various ways, like the one who grows, the one who gives, and the one who guides. They have also given up most technology, as they believe it to be dangerous, and that it only brings death. However, to ensure they are able to protect their tree god, they do keep firearms, so that they are at least on par with the rest of the wasteland in terms of fighting power. Evidence of this giving up the modern technology thing is with Branch Tender Linden. You see him walking around in the normal clothes that they wear. However, when he first encountered the Treeminders, he was actually wearing power armor, as he was a member of the Brotherhood of Steel Outcasts. If you want me to do a video on the Outcasts, let me know in the comments. Linden was actually saved by the Treeminders after being dropped off on their doorstep by a caravan that had found him after his group had almost been completely wiped out by Deathclaws. He was one of the only survivors. However, he was badly wounded. Another member of the Treeminders, Bloomseer Poplar, cared for him until he was healthy, which led to him staying there and giving up technology. But anyway, enough about Branch Tender Linden. To be welcomed into the Treeminders, one must undergo a ritual. This is done as a way of removing anything that could harm Harold and to initiate someone as a member. This ritual involves drinking the sap, which can distort one's senses. This is done as the Treeminders gather around you in the central pavilion. During this ritual, the Treeminders will also chant a prayer to scare away any bad spirits. Here is what this initiation ceremony looks like.
Ready? Drink from the basin. We will now recite the blessing to ward off any harm the outsider may be carrying before he proceeds to the grove.
I bid you depart, agents of destruction, through the power of his divine will.
Leave our homes and bodies immediately. Live no longer in them, but pass over into places where you can harm no one.
In the name of his frondescence, I call his wrath upon you, so that wherever you may go, you bear it with you.
And, diminishing from day to day, you may disappear, except where you serve the health and good purposes of mankind. May no trace of you be found.
All this, may he be so good as to grant us, who is to come to judge the living and the dead, and the world by his verdure.
Amen. Soon, you will pass peacefully into sleep, outsider. And when you awake, you will witness his glory firsthand.
As an interesting little tidbit about cults surrounding Harold, this Treeminders cult was not the original plan for a cult based on Harold. In the scrapped Project V13, there was going to be a different cult worshipping Harold. This was what was planned to be the original online Fallout game. There originally was going to be a cult named the Church of Harold. Now, the Church of Harold was not as forest-centric as the Treeminders. Instead, it had its own rituals and practices, including wearing green out of respect for Bob, who again is Harold's head tree, past vegetarianism, which forbids the consumption of meat, but allows the consumption of insects, milk, honey, sap, and fruit, as long as you don't eat the seeds. However, the jury is still out on fish, according to the brochure. People who were supposedly more devout in the Church of Harold practiced trepanation and planting a seed in the wound in hopes of becoming like Harold. Trepanation or trephination, depending on your preference, is an old surgical procedure which essentially drills a hole in your head. Don't go trying this at home, it's not exactly safe. You know, you're not a surgical professional. Leave it to the doctors. Obviously, the Church of Harold was scrapped and we have the Treeminders instead. Now we should move on to discussing the death dilemma. Should you kill Harold, stunt his growth, or should you help him spread? To start, we should discuss the options. So the first option, to kill Harold. This is what Harold asked for. He has asked his followers that previously. However, they had ignored his pleas, seeing this as some sort of riddle and not a direct request to end his suffering. When it comes to actually killing him, this can be done in one of two ways. The easy and albeit lazy way, this is after finding out Harold's fears through little sapling you. This way of helping out Harold is, well, incredibly painful and pretty much just torturing him, as it is setting him on fire. A great way to earn bad karma if that is your kind of playthrough, and a potential shout out on Galaxy News Radio. However, this is not the only way to end Harold's suffering. There is also the harder but nicer way of exploring the caves to find his heart and to stop it. However, there is also the option of increasing his growth, like Leaf Mother Laurel wishes. Through the use of her liniment, she wishes to spread Harold's forest throughout the wasteland, in hopes that it would increase his influence and bring new life throughout the wasteland, while Treefather Birch disagreed with this sentiment, believing that increasing Harold's spread and influence would actually bring them danger, due to many people in the waste not having good intentions, so he believed in keeping their deities alive, but attempting to stop his growth through applying some of the sap to his heart. When it comes to this dilemma, what could these choices potentially result in? Well, when it comes to killing Harold, there are several things that this may result in. You are ultimately killing the so-called god that the Treeminders worship. So there is the possibility of this cult disappearing. There is also the possibility, as Harold's body rots, so will parts of the forest, as they are connected to him. As with being a ghoul, it is unknown what his body could do, especially to the ecosystem around it when it breaks down, in part due to the FEV exposure and also due to the high levels of radiation that he has been exposed to. With the idea of increasing his growth through the liniment, as Leaf Mother Laurel wishes, this could be disastrous for several reasons. Firstly, with the large and excessive spread she wishes for Oasis to have, this attracts others to Oasis. With this, not everyone will have the best intentions. Some may intend to destroy Oasis, others may intend to take over and use its resources. Both of these the Treeminders would be against. The use of the liniment could also cause damage to the tree and Harold. With the use of fertilizers or growth hormones on plants if done incorrectly, this can lead to undesired results. With Harold not being exactly a plant, applying some form of plant hormone to his heart, especially if they were unable to provide the correct nutrients for the excessive growth, may lead to the tree being weaker and unable to sustain itself. On the other hand, with the use of the sap to prevent growth, firstly, it is unproven that this would stop the growth. It also, although thought to be harmless, if it was able to stop his growth, it would cause some level of harm. So this could do some damage to the forest as well. With all of these options having harmful downsides and all potentially hurting Harold, what really is the best option to go with? This is really a question of, do you allow the desires of the group to go against the desires of the one who is really affected? As with all of these options, it will always be Harold who suffers, no matter what you do. In my opinion, the best option is to do as Harold asks. Harold has been suffering for decades, stuck in the same spot, never able to do anything, as he may have previously enjoyed. He is in pain, in constant pain due to the displacement of his organs. So the best option, I believe, is to help him. Not by setting him on fire though, to actually go and stop his heart. Let me know in the comments if you would stop Harold's growth, increase his growth, or kill Harold. So is this Fallout 3's biggest moral dilemma? To decide this, we will have to consider the other moral dilemmas we see throughout the main game. These are the decision of whether or not to blow up Megaton, the replicated man, Tranquility Lane in Vault 112, and whether or not to release the FEV into the water supply. To break these down, the decision of whether or not to blow up Megaton refers to Tenpenny's desire to remove the city of Megaton, as he sees it as an eyesore. So blow up an entire civilization because a rich man in his high tower says it ruins his view, or let them continue to live, as they're not really doing anything to harm him, realistically. Not really a hard decision to make. As someone who does not frequent the tower, I don't really care about his view. As he lives in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, very little of that was ever bound to be pretty. So Megaton can continue being an eyesore. Moving on to the replicated man. To snitch or not to snitch on the synth. Wandering around as head of security in Rivet City. This quest is your initiation into the railroad, if you so choose to help the synth. However, if you do not, neither choice really changes much. There is no follow-up quests, nor is there much of a sense of urgency, or is it really made to feel like a life or death situation. With this, if you side with the railroad, you can just pretend to have gotten rid of the synth yourself, and no one will be any the wiser. Or if you don't like synths, you can just inform the doctor and he will be on his way with the synth. No one makes you feel like this is someone's gonna die if you make this decision. Someone's going to get hurt if you make this decision. With Tranquility Lane, after reading the diary of Dr. Braun and being asked to essentially ruin the lives of his prisoners, being given the option to summon the emergency shutdown of the simulation, especially as one of the members of his vault requests it, makes the idea of letting them escape through death not all that hard of a pill to swallow, as it is essentially just ending their suffering. And finally, the to poison or not to poison the water supply by siding with the Enclave. Should you release the FEV into the waters? Considering that this FEV released into the water would ultimately affect you too, it is not that hard to think twice about it, as you would be exposed to it as soon as you drink the water. So yes, this makes the decision of what to do with Harold the hardest moral dilemma in the main game. No matter what you do, it will affect someone negatively. Going against Harold's wishes causes him pain. It continues to cause him pain actually. Even more if you allow him to grow. Killing Harold helps Harold, but also hurts the Treeminders as it ultimately destroys their god. And you literally killed the best friend of little sapling you. With this, you will ultimately hurt someone no matter what you do, whether it be Harold or the Treeminders. Let me know in the comments what you think the biggest moral dilemma of Fallout 3 is. If you enjoyed this video and are curious to learn more about Tranquility Lane in Vault 112, you should check out this video. It discusses the simulation and whether or not it could actually work.